So I'd like to call the Social Services and Housing Committee to order. And it's Thursday, September the 8th, 2016. And does anybody have a declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll go to the number 2 on the agenda. Today it's mostly information items. The first one is the exemption of child support. So Christine will give the report.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Nancy Reinhardt, the manager of the Ontario Works program, has provided a summary around these exemptions that are happening. The province has been moving strategically away from providing benefits really that are for children through the Ontario Works system. And so no longer will child support or Canada Pension Plan benefits be something that we're reducing as income from the household as a whole, but rather that will be considered income that's primarily to meet the children's needs. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Does anybody have any questions on this? So before, in social services, when it says orphan benefit, what is that? Like, is that just for their children, or I just don't, the terminology sometimes baffles me.
Sure. So the Canada Pension Plan orphan benefit is when a pension plan member dies prior to reaching pension, if they have a child that's under 18 years of age or still in post-secondary education full-time, they're entitled to a Canada Pension Plan orphan benefit. And so that used to be deducted from household income dollar for dollar. And so no longer is that the case, so that those dollars can then be used to support the needs of the children that might be in households where the lone parent is receiving Ontario Works as their income.
Okay, sounds good. B is the 2016 Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation Symposium. If you want to elaborate on it.
Sure, just to bring your attention to the symposium that's taking place September 28th. It's a partnership between Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, ourselves as well as Grey County, and a number of other agencies are participating in the various panels. And so for your information, Tanya Dixon, the Housing Services Manager, has also attached the flyers that give some more information on that symposium.
Okay, thank you. And next, 2C, the Bruce County Community Housing Registry wait list update for Q2.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, you will see that we have had a significant increase in the number of applicants on the waiting list in the last quarter. So we are up 344 households from 316 in the first quarter. And so that's a number of new applications because we've continued to house people at the same rate as we were previously. Those increases too, you'll see in the graphs that outline the household types, that it's actually been increases in all household types. So it's not that we're seeing an increase in one particular type of household, it's just a general increase across the board in the number of new applications.
So that report is for your information, so more work to be done there. Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
Do you have a...
I'm sure. Just a question. To get an understanding of that list, do you get people come on and off it because they wait too long? And is that really a good representation of the people in our community that are having difficulty finding housing? These numbers.
Sure. In some of the larger communities, it wouldn't always be a good representation, but because of the numbers on our wait list, we are able to manage, and so the staff person that works on this does regular updates with all the people that are on the wait list. So we do regularly have people that might leave the wait list either because they've moved out of the area or their financial situation has changed, and so those numbers are removed. So given time in a quarter, it is a good representation of truly who's waiting on the list. What's a little bit skewed is that typically if there's no housing of a particular type available in a community, we don't know how many people might have that need. So for example, if you look at the breakdown by the municipality, in South Bruce, we only have housing for adults and seniors. So we don't have families applying to be on the wait list for housing in South Bruce. There may be families who have that need. But generally, our actual number of households is quite up-to-date information because they're doing those checks to determine if the people are still wanting to be on the list.
If I might, I guess a better way to look at getting an understanding of the problem would be the trends to see whether it's increasing or decreasing over some period, probably, right?
Sure, and I can take this back. We can start to look at the data perhaps in a new way where we're showing comparisons of similar periods in years past, and that might start to help with that, answering that question.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry, Robert?
I had a resident in Teeswater complain she's been trying to get into the geared-to-income apartments that we have in Teeswater, and she claims that there has been a party from Guelph, that they never did come from Teeswater area, and now they're in there, and somebody else, I think, from Kitchener. So can people from the city apply to our local places and bump our own people?
So the wait list is based on a chronological order by date of application received. And so we do not have a priority that we set that someone who currently resides in the county of Bruce would take precedent over someone moving in from another area, and typically that wouldn't be the case. Sometimes the people that are on the list are actually people that are former residents of Bruce County that are returning to Bruce County. Quite often is what we see as well too. So it very well could be that 2 people were ahead of that applicant on the wait list from out of the area.
Dave?
So the only realistic way to decrease the number on the wait list in our high need areas is to build more spaces. Is that correct?
That will assist with a portion of it, certainly. As we add additional units, then that creates less pressure on the system, exactly. There will always be a certain number of households that are below an income level that they can afford what's in the private sector, right? So typically it's our social assistance recipients, whether they're Ontario Works or those that are on Ontario Disability, and some pensioners as well too, that their fixed income keeps them below that of being able to afford a market rent in the community. So that's all based on our, our population numbers in terms of how many households are at that income level. But definitely as we increase the number of affordable units, that would decrease the wait list.
Yes, Dave?
And another quick question. I guess, obviously, when we've talked about this before, we have to work with contractors in order to provide new housing, but it seems the municipalities have to provide the land. Is that usually the case? It's free land, and then the contractors will move in and do their job, and
It certainly removes some of the barriers because it changes the financial model in which then the business of rental units can operate. If there's not a land cost that's attached to building, then of course that reduces what they need to bring in terms of maintaining that building over time. So the other piece of it too is the role that the nonprofit agencies that support those with special needs in our community, whether it's developmental needs or addictions or mental health needs. Again, because they're nonprofits, they're able to have a different model in terms of costs associated. So they're obviously another important partner. And those are some of the exact discussions that will be happening at the symposium that'll happen at the end of September.
Jay's first. Okay.
Thanks, Milt.
Oh, you're so polite.
And this is getting back to where Robert was coming from, outside the areas coming in. Is it against the law to discriminate against somebody coming in from outside the area, where if somebody lives in Bruce County for, say, 5 years, they would score higher on a criteria for getting into these apartments? Or is that, do you understand my question there?
I do, thank you. So some of the other larger municipalities have in the past had various priority settings that they established. Typically, when you set priority settings, it might be around homelessness or particular target groups, like someone with mental health and addictions, and so what they do is they then move through their wait list in regards of those priority settings. Some of them have done that for a number of years, and as they're moving forward with our new processes around new best practices with Housing First policies, they're now moving away from setting those priorities. Typically, what we're seeing more so is the provincial priority of special priority, which is those with domestic violence issues. In most cases are the only priority that's being set. So anyone who is trying to remove themselves from a domestic violence situation does take priority over someone else on the waiting list. When we have people that have their names on the list to move into Bruce County, we also have Bruce County residents that have their names on the list to move out as well too. So part of the change with the Housing Services Act in the last few years is starting to look at how can we manage kind of those reciprocal relationships, and they're actually piloting a program where the housing benefit could become more portable, and that's just in its initial stages. So they have a few different municipalities, 22 I believe, that are on board to pilot that initially, to look at how a housing benefit might move from community to community. So if a person is living in one community and needs to move elsewhere, the benefit would move with them. The goal there is that we are finding long-term permanent solutions to sustain someone in housing. So say, for example, someone currently lives in Bruce County, all of their family supports are in another municipality, and if we were able to move them to that municipality, that would help them to sustain a healthier lifestyle. And keep their housing. And so all those factors are taken into consideration too. So we are moving into a review of what could it look like in terms of relationships across the province. Does that help?
Well, just to clarify then, so in some cases it is, like when we take contracts in, you can't give extra points for local bidders on a, say we're doing a road or something. So in this case, that wouldn't be the case. So if the Bruce County did decide that, hey, we only want to look at our residences of Bruce County and make that a priority, that's not the way that the housing committee is going. It would not be against the law to do that.
It may not be written into the regulation as such, but we could be open for a human rights discriminatory application against us.
Yeah. I'm just looking at your the wait list, the total number of applications, and I'm looking at Northern Bruce. So you include Lion's Head, which is Golden Dawn.
Yes, that is correct.
So, but when I go to the bar chart, it doesn't include, as I look at the pie, I'm assuming the number is in the pie chart, but I look at the bar chart and it shows us with 8. And I thought it should be 18, if you're counting.
Seniors?
So you were looking specifically at seniors or at the total?
I'm just looking at the total on the bar. So you scroll down. So what's the total there?
7. There's
10?
seven waiting for RGI in North Bruce Peninsula. It could be that the bar chart, the way the data is pulling, there's a rounding effect happening. It's saying 8. So the background document is just rounding it in different ways between the two charts because of the percentages. So the actual, this chart is the actual numbers per household, whereas that bar chart is rounding.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
So we've had, yes, Robert.
Just one other point I like to make here. These homes were built for geared to income to help the people that are having financial problems. I know there in that one in Teeswater, there is quite a few people in there that, mind you, they pay a lot more, they pay the top price, but they are, sold their farms and so forth, and they're worth quite a bit of money. I often wonder, we're defeating the purpose by letting those people move in there when there's poorer people that, should get that cheaper rent, but they take it up, and because I know a couple of them, I've mentioned it to them, and say, wow, it's just great living there. Everything's looked after for us. We got a communion room, and we play cards, and that isn't fair. I don't think that's what the purpose was of geared to income. So I guess there's no way we can kind of cut those people out.
So to take a step back, we have a history in social housing of a few different types of projects that were developed at different points in time. And so the former nonprofit units, which you do have the one seniors building in Teeswater, was actually built during a time when the model was we should have a certain number of market rents along with a certain number of RGI rents. And so the people that move into the market rents, and there's just a handful in each of those buildings, which was based on the model at that time, pay the market rent. And only someone who can afford the market rent can live in those units. So it's a mixed type of program. The units that were built under the former Provincial Housing Authority, there's more of a focus of entirely filling them with rent geared to income. So it's not quite the same, but if under the Residential Tenancies Act, if someone is rent geared to income and their income changes, we can then begin to charge them the market rent, but we cannot ask them to move. Once they've signed a lease, they are able to continue to live in the building as long as they wish to. But in most cases, what we find is if someone's income level really has changed, they do want to move on into the private community, and or some of them participate in the home ownership program and actually move on to home ownership.
And so that's the current model, is mixed.
We have work of in housing. So there, depending on which time frame that different components of our stock were built, they all have different rules associated with those different programs.
So if we were to build more, is this on? If we were to build more today, that would be the model of a mixed, or is it just a bunch of different whatever you can get?
So again, if we're building under the IAH program, there's certain criteria that are associated with that investment in affordable housing program. And so it's what's called an affordable model, where people pay 80% of the current market rate as set by either Canada Mortgage and Housing or the municipality, which we do set our own rate in the County of Bruce. We set a shoreline rate and an inland rate. And the reason that we do that is for obvious reasons. There's very different circumstances around what the market does in each of those areas, and we get the ministry approval for that annually to set those rates. And so if we're building under that program, it's 80% of the market value. Any other programs that arise or opportunities, if we were to sell our remaining former provincial stock, we have to keep those as strictly RGI units. So we have to replace an RGI unit with another RGI unit. So it really depends on how we're raising the funds.
It's never simple. So next, I lost it here. Next for information is the Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association 2016 waitlist survey report.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just wanted to bring attention to Council of this report and note that the Ontario Nonprofit Association, although they've done this report for a number of years, is now going, this is the last report, and there's some very interesting data that may be of interest to you in that report, and I'm happy to take any questions if you had them.
Does anybody have any questions regarding this report? Seeing none, then our next meeting is October the 6th, 2016, and I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Dave, second by Robert. All in favor? And this meeting is adjourned. And we go to the next one.